My name is Bob Kuszewski. I'm a product manager here at InterSystems. What we'll be doing today, because of the technical difficulties, we'll have my slides over here on this screen, and then when it comes to the demo, we'll have them here. Now, what's great for those of you who are here with us today is you get to actually see the demo. That will not be part of the recording on the video, so it's going to be a pretty boring video. So, good luck to all of you who are watching online. So today we're going to talk about observability and telemetry with InterSystems IRIS. I'll do some demos. We'll talk about system alerting and monitoring, or SAM as we like to call it. But you knew all of that because that's why you came to this session. One of the things you don't know is that my background many, many years ago, back before I had gray hair, one of my many college jobs was I was working as an operator at the university's data center. And I would watch over this database system. And what that consisted of was looking at the log files, watching what was going on in the system, occasionally running the top command to see which processes were running and resource utilization and all of that. And what we needed to know was, like, hey, is the system working correctly? And if so, if not, like, why not? Well, how do I fix it, right? Back then, when the system got too overloaded, we had too much growth, our only option was to scale up the system, buy a bigger machine. And that's like a really important process today that people still use all day, every day. But so much of everything else has changed completely in the last 20, 30 years, right? We've broken up the monolith. We've added all kinds of systems, right? We've added API managers, web gateways, API servers. Some of these servers scale out, so you have lots of machines running the same loads. Many of the physical servers have migrated to virtual machines, and some of them have migrated to containers still. And in the process, we stopped thinking about these machines as pets, as individuals with their own names and everything, and just thought of them as cattle. They're all given random names, it doesn't matter. When one stops working properly, we get rid of it and we throw in a new one, right? Meanwhile, the storage has changed, right? We went from physically attached storage to network attached storage to virtual storage systems. Networks have kind of gone the same way, right? We went from the physical wired networks to 10 gigabit fiber that we're running in our data centers today. You have VPNs and WANs and public key infrastructure and all of this stuff. And the next thing you know, we've got 100 pieces of equipment that are running that same service, right? And so what did we call? We started calling that equipment, we started calling it infrastructure. And then we needed to monitor that infrastructure. So what did we do? We started aggregating the log files. We started collecting metrics from those servers. We called that signals. And then from there, what do? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes so I don't forget all of the words that I have up here because they're all very small. Right, so collecting all of that, what do we do with all that information? Well, we called it telemetry information. And we started saying, well, what do we do with it? Well, so of course, being who we are, we provisioned more infrastructure to keep track of the telemetry information. And then we could do things like alert if something goes wrong across multiple systems, right? And with all of this change, the fundamental question we are still asking is, hey, is this system working? If not, why not? Or under what circumstances is it going to stop working? That set of questions is so basic, so fundamental to what we do every day. But that's the basis of telemetry. That's really what telemetry is all about. So I've got the clicker. So I asked my friends, hey, give me a definition of what observability means to you. And my favorite is the one that's up here in bold. It says, an observability solution uses all of your data to avoid blind spots. And you could read all these other definitions, but they're all trying to get at the same thing, right? They're trying to say, well, let's gather all the information we have, look at it, analyze it, and say, hey, what's working, what's not working, and why? Which leads us to the next question. Well, what data do we have? So in the observability community, we talk about data in really three main categories. We talk about logs and events. They're kind of the same thing, a thing that happened at a point of time, right? Metrics, so these are numbers that can go up and down over time, like CPU utilization. I mean, this is all stuff you've all seen a million times in different forms and flavors. It just has different names now, right? The third category is traces. How many of you are kind of really familiar with traces? Yeah, it's new. We all kind of know it exists. We've all been doing it forever. It's just that we're not thinking about it in the way that folks are thinking about it. It's the way where you say, hey, I'm watching one request flow from one piece of equipment to another, or one layer of our software to another, and I'm monitoring how long it takes. How many of you have ever had to put in a start time, and then run some function, and then end time, and then print the delta in time, right? We've all done it. I've done it, I don't know, 10 million times, right? That's what traces really are. And we're starting to standardize on formats for traces and have infrastructure that you can turn on and off tracing in a dynamic and reasonable way so that you can look at particular requests as they flow through the system. Which brings us to, well, what are these open standards and tools? So the last few years has really seen an explosion in observability and the tools and the techniques, largely because of things like Kubernetes kind of taking over the world. And having a lot of containers and all of that really generates a lot of situations where your infrastructure is quite large and you need tools to solve these problems. So the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, those are the people behind Kubernetes, they've really taken the lead here. These particular open standards are all Cloud Native Computing Foundation standards of various forms or flavors. So there are standards for metrics, how to collect them, standards for traces, standards for log files, how to log them. And what's great about having open standards like this is there's a lot of tools out there that will now say, oh, you write your metrics in open metrics format, we can collect those. So you can use IRIS. I'm jumping ahead to my next slide, sorry. What's great is IRIS is now starting to also embrace these open standards. So you can turn on structured logging, and structured logging will let you write out logs in a standard format that can be ingested by lots of tools that are out there in the world today. Same with metrics. So we published the metrics endpoint. Everyone look at the metrics endpoint before? A couple of you, all right, good. So the metrics endpoint allows you to, well, what IRIS does is it publishes metrics like CPU utilization, or how many or how long your SQL queries have been taking on a per namespace basis, all of these sorts of things, and it publishes it through this standard API, monitor metrics API that's running. And so you can collect that with any open metrics client that's out there. I will show you that in just a minute. New metrics, we've been adding more metrics over the last couple of years since we last all got together. Here are a bunch that were added in 2021.1 that I thought would be of particular interest to you. I know some of you are squinting. The slides are available in the cVent app, by the way. So on the SQL side, we instrumented a number of things that are basically, hey, how many queries, or what's the average runtime of queries in a particular namespace? And what's the standard deviation of that look like? So if you've got a couple of queries that are way out there, you can alarm on those if you'd like to. And also how many queries per second are running. On the interoperability side, we've instrumented the work queue manager, which is a little bit under the covers for interoperability, but it's what schedules all of the work that's running in your interoperability world. So you can say things like, hey, how much work is backed up in a particular area? Or hey, is something stuck? You can monitor that through these metrics. All right, we're going to switch over to the other computer and we're going to do a little demo. I will have to sit down for that. I apologize. So here we are looking at the metrics endpoint. So this is what the metrics endpoint looks like. You don't have to really look at this too carefully. It's just what I wanted to show you is, hey, you have metric names and they have values on it. And it's just line by line by line. And some of the metrics are broken down into groups or categories. So you can look at, database size for each one of the databases that's running on my laptop. That's what you're looking at there. So if I wanted to log a message, you would use write to console log, right? We think we've all done this every time. If anyone's used object script code, they've probably used this method, 300,000 million times. And that would normally appear in your messages.log. And it still does, even though I have turned on structured logging on this machine. So if I run that code, okay, nothing interesting happens, it ran. But if I look at my structured log, I see at the end of my structured log, I turned my structured log on for JSON format. So this is in JSON format. All of the information that was in that log message, but in a standard JSON format. So it's telling us that my super important message that salmon is running low. Apparently, that was critically important during lunchtime, maybe. And the timestamp and the process ID and all of that good stuff. So now anything that collects structured logs can pull that log and manage it however that particular tool likes to manage it, alert on it, whatever needs to be done. Similarly, have any of you ever built your own monitors to add to the monitor API? You have, excellent. That's one. That is one more than I expected. So one of the lesser known features that came out when we released the monitor API, which we released along with SAM 1.0, is you have the ability to write your own sensors. IRIS can have its own counters, whatever they are, and however many we put in there is never going to be enough or quite right to your application because you're building custom code running on this platform. So you have the ability to just by extending a class, create your own sensors and put in whatever information is appropriate to you. So this brilliant code, brilliant might be a strong word, this code creates a couple of counters that we put under the Global Summit category. And what happens is every once in a while the get sensors call gets called, and your job is to set a bunch of sensor values at that moment in time. It's as simple as that. So I'm setting 3 sensors, one that's people sleeping in Bob's session. I just set it to a random number because I had a hard time predicting. I see at least 6 or 7 at the moment, so not bad. And the other is we have the lunches served sensors. How many salmons and how many beefs have been served, and I'm just pulling a global out, and I'm also incrementing that global. Obviously, you would do something a lot more intelligent than a random number and constantly going up global. In fact, I forgot to reset that sensor this morning, so that number is going to be very large. Apparently we served lunch for all of Seattle, probably. when we look at it. So there you go. That's my sensor. So if I go over to the monitor API, and I scroll down to the bottom, you see all the things that IRIS itself publishes. But now we have 3 custom sensors right here. We have the lunches served for the beef ones is 207,000, which is apparently quite popular. And the salmon was 69,000, and there are 90 people currently sleeping in this session. So that's all well and good. But what's more interesting about it is to say, hey, all of this stuff, now that we have it in standard format, we can collect it in any number of commercial tools. So this is a commercial tool called Datadog. Has anyone heard of Datadog? It's all the hotness these days with the cool kids, which I am not, by the way. So if I have Datadog running on my laptop here, the collector running on my laptop here, and it picked up the message, salmon is running low, that I sent just a couple of minutes ago. And I could set up alerts on this. I could do all kinds of things inside Datadog. So Datadog has all kinds of functionality that I'm not going to do a proper demo of. They've got lots of them on the web that you can look at. The other thing that I want to show is metrics. So now we have 3 metrics. Well, we have lots of metrics from IRIS that it's collecting. But if I wanted to look at, I loaded them all in Datadog under the name IRIS Demo, meaning this machine is IRIS Demo. And here we go, over the last hour, how many people are sleeping in my session. I could look, at different time frames if that's a value. Lots of things that you can do here. Same with the Global Summit lunches served. Oh, yeah, because the numbers are really high. They're not changing fast enough to look interesting in this. But anyway, you could look at the 2 lunches served and you can plot them against each other. In fact, I will do that. Well, I can break it down by the salmon and the beef is what I wanted to show you. And okay, I clicked something wrong on here, but that's okay. Great, so let's go back to the presentation. So now that you've seen it running, you've seen it being collected with Datadog, I picked Datadog because it was easy for me to demo. And there's a couple of people who were kind of asking about Datadog, and so I said, I'll demo Datadog. But I could have just as easily picked any of these other platforms or hundreds more. So in all likelihood, your data center, whoever's watching over your infrastructure, already has a tool that can collect all of this great information from your IRIS instances. I don't know which ones of these that you're using, but I'm guessing you're using one of these logo things. The Nagios, okay. Dynatrace is really popular. Prometheus is an open source one that's really popular. You've heard of a lot of these. Some of these just do one type of metric. Some of these do others. I just kind of picked some logos at random here. But there are literally hundreds of these that are out there. Which brings me to, well, what about SAM? So InterSystems provides the system alerting and monitoring. So what is it? It is a tool for real-time alerting and monitoring of IRIS clusters. It's built on open source tools to collect information from the monitor endpoints, so your IRIS instances, and both metrics and alerts. Alerts are also in the metrics API. They come from the log files, so if you're processing log files separately, you don't have to process them. But so SAM is not a full-featured commercial tool like Datadog or Nagios or Dynatrace or any of these. It's pretty basic. but its price point is perfect. It's free, comes with IRIS. And you can run it in parallel with whatever other tool you want. You could run 6 of these observability tools if you so desire. That's another beauty of the way these standards are written. So what else did I want to say about SAM? Sorry, just checking my notes, make sure I didn't collect anything. Oh, SAM includes a few tools here that, that you might not know the logos off the top of your head. So there's Prometheus, which is a visualization tool. Prometheus collects time series data. Sorry about that. Grafana is the visualization tool. This one is Alert Manager. So that allows you to set up an alert if some metric goes out of whack. And Nginx handles API routing within the SAM. These are all running as Docker containers, so within the Docker Compose setup. So what else about SAM do we want to know? So we've got one more thing that I want to talk about, and that is we are very excited to announce SAM 2.0. So SAM 2.0, what does it bring to the table? So we have upgraded all of those components to the latest and greatest versions of them. It has been 2 years since we've done that, so there's a lot of things in there that are great. We also have the ability to export and import configuration. So this is a real pain point for those of you running SAM 1.0 or 1.1. Yeah.
You forgot to mention that the installation is super easy.
That what is super easy?
Installation.
Installation of SAM is super easy. It's just a Docker Compose file. If you're running IKO, if you're running Kubernetes, it's just an option that you just turn on in your IRIS config file. You can export and import. So when you upgrade, you can export all of your configuration and all of your alerts and all of that setup. And then you can import it into your new version of SAM. You can have multiple Grafana dashboards now. So when you look at an instance, you can select which dashboard you want to see as the default dashboard. You can have URL prefixes, which allow you to have multiple IRIS instances get monitored, who are all running behind the same host name or IP address. And you can use HTTPS to collect from all of your IRIS instances. So now we'll switch back to this computer, and I will do a quick demo of SAM 2.0. Assuming I didn't mess it up when I was futzing with the computer. All right. So we have, how many here have used SAM before, looked at it? I know at least 1 or 2 of you. All right, a few of you. So this is the SAM dashboard. When you first log in, you'll see all of your IRIS clusters that are currently configured. You could always add a new cluster to it, or you could configure this. And this is also, by the way, where you do import and export of your configuration now. So you click on the cluster in question. It looks like it's having a hard time talking to my IRIS that I have running on my desktop. Sorry about that. So when you click on the cluster, you can look at your cluster, and you can change all of its configuration, including any alerts that you want to set up for that particular cluster. And then you can click down to particular instances. So this demo does not have like 12 instances in it. If I had in my cluster like 6 compute nodes and 5 data nodes, they would all be listed there, right? So this just has one that's running on my machine. And you can, wow, this demo is boring, isn't it? There's no data. Yeah, so you can see the dashboard. That's there's a default dashboard, and now if you click Edit Instance, you can also set which dashboard you would like. So I created a dashboard called the Global Summit Dashboard that shows all of the people sleeping and the lunches served. So you can save that as the default. I might have to restart my IRIS instance to start to collect information. And this View in Grafana button, this is the same View in Grafana button we've always had. But you notice that Grafana has a lot more features to it because we've upgraded Grafana. And here you can create more dashboards. You can kind of create whatever visualization you want for, hey, what's going on with IRIS for that data that we've collected out of it. All right. So that was the main things about it. So SAM 2.0, it is not quite ready to go out the door. Sorry, that demo didn't have data in it. It did last week, but clearly I did something over the weekend. SAM 2.0 is part of our early access program. I think you've probably been pitched, hey, you can sign up for early access programs like 12 times by now. If you haven't, hey, you can sign up for early access programs. We have like 6 of them that we're looking for participants to join. Don't sign up for all 6 of them. Just pick the 1 or the 2 that are really of particular interest to you. And I'll get the email if you join this, and I will add you to the list, and you'll be able to download it and run it. I have it ready to roll. It's just, if you're interested, let me know. All right, key takeaways. So observability. Is the system working properly? That's what we're all trying to get out here with operations and monitoring and observability, right? And you're trying to use all of your data to avoid the blind spots. We have lots of standards now for collecting this data, which is a terrific step forward from where we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. If you use the Monitor API, you can create whatever monitors you need for your application, and they will just get plugged in and flow with whatever the tool is that you need to collect them with. If you run the log daemon routine, you can turn on structured logging, and the same thing will happen with your logs. And we have lots of standards that are out there. And SAM 2.0 is now out. If you are interested in the early access program, let me know. We've upgraded all the components. We have import and export. That's it. Next steps. Well, I've got links here to the documentation. You unfortunately can't click on the screen that's up here, but the slides are all in the Cvent app, or they should be in the Cvent app. And you'll be able to click on the links from inside there. Or you can always, of course, reach out to me, and I will send you the deck, or I will answer whatever questions you might have. So once again, I'm Bob. Feel free to reach out anytime. And all I have left to do is to say thank you. And if you have questions, I think we have 5 minutes. I can take questions. Yes?
Is there any talk about possibly releasing SAM outside of Docker?
So the question was, is there talk of using SAM outside of Docker? And the answer is yes, but, and the but is an important but. It's because the components that we're using are all really Linux components. So there's not a Windows version of all of these components that you'll be able to
I mean, I'm going to run IRIS on Linux eventually.
Okay.
But I just don't have operationally Docker support.
Okay.
That's why I was asking.
Gotcha. So really that just becomes a documentation question for, can I document everything that the Docker Compose file does in such a way that you'll be able to successfully take all of that and say, oh, I see what it's doing, and set it up all manually. We haven't done that. I don't think it's in the cards for any time soon, but it's a good idea. I'll put it on the list. Other questions? Yes.
Which time frame is the data available in SAM? How far can you look back?
So SAM is really a real-time alerting tool. By default, it holds onto metrics for 2 whole days. You can configure it to go up to a whole 30 days. So if you're looking for a tool that looks back over a long period of time, your better bet is to set up Loki. Loki is the kind of more scalable version of Prometheus that allow you to collect a lot more information, or you use one of the many commercial tools that are out there, or one of the other open source data collection tools. Signos is one that's very popular. SAM itself, again, it's pretty limited in its capabilities there. Anything else? All right, fabulous. If you have any other questions, always feel free to ask. Thanks, y'all.